Welcome back to Web 2.0.tv at the Future of Television East Conference in New York. New York, we've been streaming live some of these incredible panels, and you get a chance to sit down with me and some of the great brains that are gathering to talk about the future. I'm Kimberly Dykman. The man to my right is Howard Bass of Ernst & Young. I want to get this right. Senior Partner, Global Media and Entertainment Advisory Services.
Perfect.
There's got to be like a word like laser or radar. There's got to be a word that covers that, but maybe no?
You mean we don't have an acronym for that?
Yeah, that's the word, acronym. We'll work on that. But in the meantime, biggest question, first and foremost, why are you guys here? This is not a normal little outing for you, is it?
No,
we're going to head
actually,
on to New York when it's almost sub-zero and gather with some of these folks.
It's a totally normal thing for us because the future of television is critical to all of our client base. The future of what television is going to mean to broadcasters, to cable companies, to ad agencies, to mobile device makers, to everybody in that entire ecosystem is critical. And what we do is, the reason we come to this thing is to make sure that we calibrate what our own market experience is, what we see every day, what we talk to our clients about, with what other people, and it's like a very accelerated way to calibrate what we see every day, what we're talking to our clients about, and what other thought leaders in the industry say.
Well, it's almost as if it doesn't do any harm to show up at this little brain trust environment and pull out what you can. It's not going against the grain. It's actually saying, well, we're just going to stay cutting edge, and maybe there's some interesting topics. So I wonder, did you have any ahas while people were speaking?
Well, I think it's kind of a two-way thing. We don't come just to listen to what the ahas are, but we have a very definite point of view about what the future of television is. The reason I'm speaking on a panel, which is in a few minutes, is because we do a lot of proprietary research. We do CEO surveys. The major media companies, what do they see? What are the operational challenges they have? And then what we do is deploy Ernst & Young people in response to what clients really have as issues. There's a big difference between the strategies that people talk about here to drive revenue, to drive ad sales, to drive video, and then what it takes to do that operationally. You got to have privacy. You got to have security over the content. You have to have the rights to the content. You have to be able to find the content, tag the content, deliver the content in a cost-effective way. To try to make money today in this marketplace, given kind of the nascent revenue streams for major media companies, is a tremendous challenge. One of the things they need is visibility into what all those costs really are. Look at the cost of you guys just producing this little segment. If you think about what the revenues are for Web TV 2.0, you can't afford an awful lot of infrastructure. You might be a lot of talent, but you can't afford an awful lot of infrastructure, right? In order to drive this kind of content. Just put that on an order of magnitude scale, and you realize the challenges, the real fundamental business and finance challenges that our clients have. So we're here to talk about that at that panel and to learn and calibrate and make sure that our thinking is just as leading edge, right up to the minute as it can be, because that's what our clients want to talk to us about, all of our partners.
So if you get a few texts, because they have that interactive little screen up there, people texting in, what are some of the things that you feel people may pop in and ask?
Well, I'm hoping that people will ask, is it really true? Are we really at like a tipping point where mobile TV and video really has an opportunity to have scale and take off? And if so, why do you think so? Because we've done our homework, as you would well imagine a firm like ours does. And we actually believe that the convergence of new devices that are right now in the hands of people, the networks and the infrastructure to carry the content, and the content itself that's being customized for mobile TV, I actually think that even though we've been talking about it for 10 years, we're kind of just approaching that tipping point. If you look at what the projections are for, let's say, 3G network, the connectivity, you're talking about, if you looked from today to 2012, it's 3 times. If you look at it from 2007, it's 8 times. So the amount of wireless connectivity at really high bandwidth is going to be 8 times more than it was last year. That's tremendous opportunity. Look at all the devices. There's a lot of cool devices that have just come out in the marketplace. Great screens, fast connections, wonderful interfaces. People are going to use them. There's thousands of applications available for those devices, right? It's going to be cool and fun, and people are going to interact more. It's going to become a bigger part of their life, and that's going to drive mobile TV, advertising, subscription-based revenue models.
So what then is this biggest hiccup? If we're at this tipping point, and I don't know if we're just going through the growing pains before we fall over the edge, what is that hiccup between strategy and execution?
That's a really good question.
I mean, it's like, is it, because it doesn't look like this little crack, it's like this chasm.
It's actually more complicated operationally than the strategies work, but actually putting them into place. There's also a lot of cultural barriers. If you look at the people, who are in the content and advertising value chain, you think about how they grew up, how they thought about reaching audiences, how they thought about maintaining their brands, they thought about connecting with consumers. This is a big shift for them to make in a short period of time. And when you're trying to do something that's emerging, there's not an awful lot of stuff you can point to. If you have 50 years of history in a traditional way of thinking about business, content, and advertising, and there's terrific new ideas that are being employed, but those have been around for a year, 3 years, maybe 5 years. At the max, really hard for them to make the transition. So I wouldn't underestimate the kind of cultural challenge that exists in the institutions to adopt this. That's one of the blocks. And the other thing is there are actually technological challenges. There's not ubiquity and standards in deploying content or advertising. It's really easy to buy a network spot. Really easy to buy a cable TV spot. Everybody knows how to buy it.
I can put one on my credit card tomorrow.
Yeah, well, no, you know how to get it there. You know what format to give it in. You know how to pay for it. If you're talking about deploying advertising against micro-targeted audiences based on mobile devices, you're talking about multi-platform, multi-format. You got to transcode it. You got to clear it. There's a lot of challenges. And then, of course, even the advertising and then trying to report the metrics and try to explain. People are used to very simple metrics around audience, gross rating points, and demos. You're trying to translate a whole series, it's almost too much data that exists in the internet and what will exist in mobile, and try to translate that onto the same basis that they've been used to looking at the effectiveness of their content and advertising. It's much harder to make that change for people.
So some of these CEOs that you speak with, is anyone, humor me, is anyone willing to say, we're just going to kind of wait and watch these competitors or these leaders in other industries to see if they're going to run with one idea and we're going to go in the opposite direction, or we're going to pull up some of the ideas that they're doing? Is it a hesitancy maybe that they're hoping will save them?
It's kind of, I'm glad you asked me that question. One of the things that I love is that I actually get to meet most of these CEOs one-on-one and have this kind of dialogue, maybe without the cameras. And what you find is that they have tremendous passion and vision, and they really believe in taking their really strong brands and their content and delivering it where and when their consumers want to have it. They fundamentally believe in it. They're not trying to duck that. And it's difficult when you look at the ecosystem and you look at the size of their organizations, it's difficult to execute. That's really what it's about. There's a lot of buy-in and support at an executive level in the top media companies. The challenge, though, is how do you actually execute it and drive that in the organization?
Maybe they can just pray about it?
No, they lead. These men and women are smart, they're tough, and they lead their people, and they have really high expectations.
Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And it may seem that you're an odd one in the match in here, but you definitely do belong, and I'm sure you're going to have a great time at your panel. It's nice to see some fresh blood from Ernst & Young sitting here and saying, why don't we have a part in this?
We got a big part.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Take care of yourself. Sit still
you.
for a second. Again, you're watching The Future of Television East on Web 2.0.tv. I'm Kimberly Dyckman. We'll be back in just a smidge.